Now broadcasting from the Next Gen Conservative Studio in sunny South Florida, bringing you the latest in politics, current events, and pop culture. This is the Whitfield Report with Sam Whitfield.
Hey there, folks. Welcome to the Monday edition of the Whitfield Report. And, I think everyone knows what we're going to be talking about today because it's been all over the news this weekend.
Right, yeah. SteamOS 3.5 updates coming out. It's going to be huge. It's going to change everything. I mean, obviously, we're going to talk about Trump, right? The elephant in the room.
Yeah, I mean, listen, a lot of people wanted me to do a show on Saturday because of it. And I told people on Twitter to, wait until Monday because honestly, and even now this is the case, we're recording this at 3:15 in the afternoon Eastern Standard Time. And we still don't know exactly what's is happening with this, I guess potential arrest that could be happening either tomorrow or sometime later this week, if it even happens at all.
Right. So, let's trace back to what's the source of all of this, because it's not like the New York District Attorney's Office put out a statement or anything, right? So we have an anonymous source leak, supposedly from within the District Attorney's Office in Manhattan, who this anonymous person has leaked information that at some point in the near future, imminently, that Donald Trump would be indicted on some charge related to Stormy Daniels. It's not clear what charge specifically, but we know it's related to the Stormy Daniels case, or that's what the anonymous source says. We always have to remember anonymous sources. Like, people kind of get past that and get caught up in the hype, but this all comes from an anonymous source, and that's what we know, is that they potentially would arrest Trump this week. And that was leaked out to the press probably sometime Friday evening is probably when the first leak happened. That's usually how these things go, right? Because the weekend news cycle shit. And then it just spread like wildfire. I would say Saturday was the first time most people were really talking about it. And it didn't slow down from there on Sunday either. But still, we don't have any indictment. We don't have any arrest. We don't have any official statement from anybody except Trump saying, if they're going to arrest me, you should protest it. It's a miscarriage of justice. It's a political hack job. That this is a political thing. I can get into why I think that. Obviously, we are biased to kind of believe that. Ladies and gentlemen, I know, shocker, the guy with the Trump banner behind him has a little bit of a bias, but it just seems to be that it is a political thing, because this is a case that has been settled. The Stormy Daniels case has been settled in court, and she was actually fined $300,000 for defamation for the claims that she made about Trump in her book. However, the Michael Cohen thing is supposedly what this is related to. And the brief version of that is he was a former Trump attorney who has turned state's evidence and also Orange Man Bad, TDS, and has been making all kinds of claims for years. And what that led to was, at the same time, this Trump derangement syndrome crowd, the district attorney in question in Manhattan, she actually ran for that office on the premise that she was going to charge Donald Trump with a crime. And she said she was willing to change laws and statutes to get that done. And it does appear that she has managed to do that, at least enough to get a grand jury indictment. And I think it's really important to point out that a grand jury indictment is not really proof of anything. except that you got indicted. The old adage is you could indict a ham sandwich if you wanted to, because a grand jury is more likely to come back with, because the standard of evidence for a grand jury is probable cause, right? Is there probable cause to bring this to trial? And of course they even factor in, to bring it to trial potentially means there could be a plea deal before trial, but it's leverage for the district attorneys to get those kind of plea deals or to bring a controversial case to a trial. And so it's really easy to convince a grand jury to bring something to trial. So Trump being indicted doesn't prove or disprove anything. And that's really important to keep in mind.
Right, and I was actually listening to Dan Bongino's podcast earlier this morning, and he made the point that a lot of people on our side, they do like to go with the whole, oh, this is a deep state Jason Bourne type conspiracy thing because that's sexy, it makes it seem edgy and whatnot. But what this is really, I think he was correct.
And potentially there's a grain of truth, right? Maybe not the whole truth, but certainly there are people within intelligence agencies and everywhere else within the government that have a vested interest in trying to screw Trump, particularly as he's running for president. And that's the thing that they all want to deny. They act like they're being objective, but everybody but them. No, I was going to say everybody but them sees through it. No, they see through it too, but it's politically advantageous to. The term is tactical ignorance. They're using tactical ignorance to try and pretend like they don't know. Oh, no, this isn't about punishing our political enemies. No. Nobody's above the law.
Well, the thing of it is,
except that they changed the law. They literally are saying we will change the law to get this outcome. That's political hatchet job. That's what that is.
Well, the other thing that he was saying though too that I've kind of been saying all weekend is this doesn't have to be like some deep state whole conspiracy thing, because what the DNC wants is they want Trump's mugshot so that they can post it and use it in TVs and commercials and web banners and get here's Trump's mugshot. Now
they know the DeSantis really is a faction exists, right? Whatever anybody feels about DeSantis himself and the potential between a face-off from them, and we've already talked about this last week on the show, right? Like there's a lot there. Whatever anybody feels about that, from the left's point of view, they smell that blood, so to speak, of that DeSantis faction. And they are going to say, oh, well, look at this. He's a filthy criminal. And here you have DeSantis, and he's a clean, upstanding guy. They're going to push him. But that doesn't, in my opinion, reflect necessarily on DeSantis himself.
No.
But what does reflect on him is that as of the last time I checked, which admittedly I haven't checked since this morning, he has had nothing to say about any of this. And it would be politically expedient, in my opinion, for him to say a citizen of my state is not going to be mistreated by the government. That's all he has to say. He doesn't have to say, I think Trump's innocent. Just, we're not going to allow you to frog march him out of Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah, I mean that is kind of, it is suspicious even for me, and I love DeSantis. It is kind of fishy that he hasn't said anything as of the recording of this podcast. Now,
to play devil's advocate, even though I could say that maybe he doesn't know what to say. Maybe he's worried that whatever he says is a trap. I can understand all that, but it's more important for him to just say, look, we're not going to let any abuse of the law happen to a citizen of my state. And a friend, because they've had their disagreements, right? But Trump has also campaigned for him and with him. I don't think that there's serious personal animosity between the two. That would be absurd to me.
Well, even Mike Pence, who, former Vice President Mike Pence, who, from what I understand, it's kind of come out, and maybe this is false, but it's kind of come out that he and Trump, I guess, didn't exactly get along behind the scenes. And
Right.
even he, today said that this was a witch hunt and that this was an abuse of power and very
Right.
wrong.
Because unless you're a Democrat, there's no political downside to doing that. And so if DeSantis is unsure, then he needs to realize that, and come out. And if it's any other reason, then there's good reason to be suspicious of him. If he's just unsure, I can actually understand that.
Well, speaking of the Democrats, though, it is interesting that you bring up the Democrats because I was so when the story broke, I was actually I was actually out. I actually went out to breakfast on Saturday, and I had my iPad with me, so I was watching Newsmax and just this, the Saturday show, and when the story broke, and they actually had Barney Frank, my boy Lollipop for you old Rush Limbaugh fans out there, and even Barney Frank was saying that, even as a Democrat, this was, you know, this was not, this was kind of unprecedented that the former president would get arrested, and he didn't seem entirely sure that it was a good idea, and that's a Democrat saying that. So
Mm. He's also a Democrat that, yeah, I personally despise, being he's from my state, of course.
oh yeah, I'm not saying that like he's on our side or whatnot, but
No, you're saying that even Barney Frank isn't this stupid. That's
right.
That's
Yeah.
why I wanted to point it out. It's absurd because Barney Frank is one of the most far left people in Congress for fucking ever. God, he's been there certainly before I was born.
Yeah, well, I mean, Barney Frank is also, we were talking at the Connie last week. Barney Frank is is one of the reasons why the whole thing is kind of messed up. So
Mm-hmm. Frank Dodd and all that. Yeah, I'm aware, and more aware than most. Right, that the usual ones that people know on a national level are like Nancy and Maxine Waters and those people. But Barney Frank is one of the most despicable people in Congress, and even he's not despicable enough to try frog marching his political opponent in handcuffs over some really, really ridiculous stuff that would, frankly, giving payouts at all, if that's what the problem is, giving payouts for inappropriate behavior, Congress better be fucking worried then, shouldn't they? If that can lead to you being frog marched around, they're all in a lot of trouble, because how many of them can't keep their hands to them fucking selves?
yeah, well, I mean, it's double standards.
Mm-hmm. Barney Frank himself has some allegations with let's just say younger men, and I'm not saying that any of it is necessarily true. And their argument is that they say that because he's a open homosexual, and that, but whatever. To me, these victims that have come out and made these allegations, there's a story there, and so he should maybe not want to see this kind of thing, right? Now it makes sense.
Right.
They should all be really concerned if that's the state of things. Also, even if it's not, right, even if we're not actually going after people that have actually made payouts, but it's the other precedent that's now being set. And I said this about the impeachments, and I'm going to triple say it about this, is that, okay, I've supported impeaching Joe Biden since before he was president. Why? Well, because they impeached Trump, and now it's just a political thing. They impeached Trump because they just had enough votes for an impeachment, and they knew that they couldn't get a conviction, and they did it again. So if we're just impeaching presidents, then okay. You impeach our guy, we'll impeach your guy. That's politics now, right? And now we're going to do, you arrest our guy, we'll arrest your guy. Well, okay. Then the moment Joe Biden's out of office, I want him in jail.
Yeah, well, I mean, so the last big cope on this that I've heard, because I do follow some, I like to see what the enemy camp is saying. They're trying to liken Trump to Al Capone, and saying that oh, this is just like Al Capone. Al Capone never actually got caught on any of the criminal things that he did. He got caught on tax evasion, and this is a similar thing. Not even close, right, to what Trump and Al Capone are nowhere
The
close.
investigations into Al Capone haven't got a fucking ounce of shit on the Mueller report.
Well, I would also argue that, the Al Capone actually at the time, he had more power and influence over Chicago, right? He had more political influence at his time than Trump does right now, right? Trump doesn't really have any actual political power other than,
Well, certainly not the kind of political power to have the actual government and actual law enforcement cover up and murders, right?
Right.
Because that's what Al Capone, we got to put this in frame, is Al Capone killed people, many people, at least 14 that we're aware of, and that wasn't what took him down. But that's because why would obviously murder is generally a state or county issue, how they handle the law enforcement of it. And so if the state and county officials are in his pocket, there's no chance that they're going to indict him for murder.
Right. So
you grease the right palms. But Trump is the most investigated person in America alive today, I would say.
Yeah, I think that's a safe assumption. Maybe second would be Alex Jones, but yeah, Trump is definitely up there.
But even Alex Jones versus Trump is orders of magnitude more investigated than him, because there's so many people digging into every corner to find anything and making shit up that they can just it's silly, and we laugh at it, but all the poopy diaper stuff that a lot of the reply guys do, right? It's pee pee poo poo, haha, Trumpy diaper, right? Even down to that, there are people whose entire existence is looking at pictures of Trump's ass to see if they think he has a fucking diaper on.
Yeah, geez, thanks for that, Nick Fuentes. Very cool.
Yeah. They're keeping the specially abled employed,
Well, someone has to. So, if anyone knows about peak optics, it's that guy. So
they've investigated all of his finances. They investigated every business he's ever been part of. They've investigated all of his tax returns. And what wasn't the tax returns supposed to be the big thing that was going to get him? Well, we released the tax returns. Why didn't they get him? Because the reality doesn't conform to their vision. Their vision is that Trump is an evil mob boss criminal. And the reality is he's probably one of the most squeaky clean people in the world. And he kind of had to be to get to the position that he was in.
Yeah, well,
ruthless, sure. He was a ruthless businessman. He fucked tons of people over in the course of getting to where he got to. Nobody's denying that. But in terms of illicit, illegal activities, it seems like they come up pretty fucking short looking for that.
Well, yeah, and also, if you talk to any real estate moguls in New York City, and I actually have before, that whole industry that Trump is in, particularly in New York City, is cutthroat. Yes, a few years ago, people were saying, Trump was involved with the mob, in construction. Well, so was everybody. So was everybody.
He
from the
was.
se-
He was involved in actually going to like war with them financially. He was negotiating prices of property with them. He was tougher than them in a lot of cases, and that's why he came out on top.
Yeah, but
So he dealt with the mob, but not as a buddy, as
right.
a business rival.
Yeah,
And in such they also respected him because they knew he was a force to be reckoned with.
yeah.
And he did so without goons on the streets giving out beatings, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what Michael Francis, the mob boss turned YouTuber, said about him. I don't know if you've ever like listened to any of his podcasts, but
Nope.
he's actually he's a pretty he's a he's a pretty interesting character. But yeah, that is exactly what he said about Trump, that he basically like he was better at negotiating than the mafia was, but he also said at the time when Trump was big in that game, all of the developers were were having to interact with the mob at some point
Because the mob runs the unions.
Yes.
So here's the thing for people that if you're blue collar and you're listening right now, you know what the fuck I'm talking about. I don't have to explain it to you. But like anybody that's not worked in the blue collar construction or any industry like that, like doesn't realize like what the unions really are and kind of how they operate. But especially in New York, right? It is a very mob-like organization in and of itself. And then when you have an area that has a mob, they're going to control that, right? Because it's politically advantageous and financially advantageous.
Yeah.
So the mob controls all your average construction workers in the union in terms of being able to send them to job sites. They can even, hey, you're a big, strong guy. You work for a living. Why don't we give you a couple grand and you go break his legs over there? Like they can recruit them for things. They can get them to create picket lines and be actual physical muscle on the ground without, again, just being, a goon in a suit that beats people up. And yes, this is the dirty underbelly of New York politics. That's why it's disgusting, right? And Trump, in that environment, through sheer force of will, out negotiated these unions that were run by the mob.
Yeah. Well, the other argument that I've heard is, well, that's only because he had his daddy's money to do so. And my response is, well, he made good use of his father's money then. That's all
that idea to me is kind of really sick. This idea that you're not allowed to build off your generational wealth. I don't understand why people get into that mindset if they're not a commie. Of course, you can excuse the far left for that. But I've heard, center left and even some people on the center right say that kind of stuff.
Well, yeah, and
I've even heard libertarians say that kind of stuff.
Yeah, which is weird because like when I was growing up, like getting generational wealth and then having your kids build off that generational wealth
that's the dream.
Yeah, that is the American dream personified.
I think that's the human dream. For your kids to do better than you did, right? Like as a father with a young son, elementary school son, like all I hope to do is live long enough to pass down like, my, morals and values and leave him with something behind so that he can do better than I did.
Yeah.
Or at least try. And so like, yeah, resenting somebody for that it's a really disingenuous argument, because then it would be like, oh, well, so you plan to, leave your kids nothing? Probably a lot of them are just probably going to leave their kids debt, I would imagine.
A lot.
Reverse mortgage the house and fucking take off to Vegas, right?
Well, a lot of these, not all of them, but like a lot of these, even a lot of these conservative boomers are like, well, I had to pull myself up from my bootstraps, so my
I'm sorry, boomers. I'm sorry, but that narrative isn't true. You were gifted the most prosperous and wealthy time in human history, and you sucked every last dollar out of the system, and you left your kids not even the home because you sold the home back to the bank so that you could go on a cruise. So no, you didn't pull yourself up by the bootstraps. Actually, the greatest generation, your parents, built everything for you and you shit all over it. And you left us with the bill.
Yeah. Now, granted, I can agree that our
Not
millennial,
not all, but most.
well, yeah, and I mean, look, do the millennials and Gen Z have issues? Yes.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
But
they won't be safe. If I'm on your show long enough, they won't be safe from my criticisms either, trust me.
Well,
Gen X either.
well, listen though, it's funny because we talk at like in our culture we talk at like transitioning, and I identify as I'm a millennial who chooses to identify as Gen X, and you have to acknowledge me because that's how I feel. I'm a Gen Xer, Dan. I don't.
It's weird how they define it because you'll see different people use different years, and that's because that kind of categorization is actually missing the point. So let me ask you this: what generation would you consider your parents?
I mean, definitely baby boomers.
Then you're a millennial.
My dad. Well, my dad was born in like 61, and my mom was born in 1957.
Because how it actually like pans out in reality is like the greatest generation birthed the boomers, and then there was the Jonesy generation or whatever the fuck they call it that was birthed by the silent generation in between, right? But the boomers is the important because it's kind of the starting point of all this. The boomers kids are the millennials, right? Technically. But the Gen X, right, they're from like the Jonesy generation, and Gen X are the parents of the Zoomers. And so like these two generations kind of crisscross each other, if that makes sense, as we go on.
Yeah.
And so like that's why you'll see such a massively difference in the values of millennials versus Zoomers or Gen X versus boomers, because they're actually like from kind of opposing generations throughout the system. But there was a chink in the armor, is that the boomers was such a large generation that they completely enveloped everything, and they took power and a lot of the spheres very, very early on as a generation. Like when they turned 18, they were already taking over the college campuses. That's what the hippie movement was. It was boomers asserting their political influence, and they've never stopped, and they've only gained power, and they've never given it up either. So Gen X had kind of a predisposition towards not wanting to get involved, right? A lot of the best people of Gen X went on to be like Doolittle last week guest, great show by the way, was a perfect example. They went into business, they went into the private sector, they went into things that were moving things forward in technology and finance and things like that, and of course the cynical version too is like a lot of Gen X just kind of coasted along and didn't amount to anything. But like that ignores that there was some really heavy hitters in Gen X as well. You're talking about your Gateses, whether people like him or not. That was discussed on the Doolittle pod. Watch the Doolittle episode if you haven't, audience. Really. But so these Gen X people kind of didn't go towards public policy and civics. They went towards business and technology and things like that. And but it wouldn't have mattered because they couldn't outvote the boomer block, and they had conflicting values. So Gen X never took power at all, and they were kind of the complacent generation in that way. They did take some power in finance and technology, and Silicon Valley is a product of basically that Gen X technology branch. And so that's the only power base that the boomers didn't completely control, I would say. And that's why it tends to be more radical left than most of the other establishment, because it comes from a younger demographic primarily.
Right.
And so then the millennials, as the children of the boomers, we did get raised with a lot of those boomerisms, like bootstraps. And back in my day, kids would, get spanked and they would behave and da 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 da. Like, we were raised with the boomers kind of worldview, but also the boomers' problems, because the boomers as a generation were much like exponentially higher in drug and alcohol abuse. They were exponentially higher in divorce, suicide than any previous generation. And this is a thing I don't see people talk about often, but that runs off to their children, which are the millennials. And that same dynamic is happening with the Gen X and the Zoomers in a way, where the Gen X is raised them with their values, which tend to be more extreme to the left than the boomers' values, right? And that's why there's a massive conflict, I think, of Zoomers and millennials. The millennials were raised, frankly, more conservatively, even the leftist ones.
Well, the other thing too, I actually explained this to
again, generalizations are not an attack on your favorite person.
Right.
I have boomers I love too, just as much as everybody else does.
Yeah.
I don't want to be like, oh, I'm demonizing a whole group of people. I'm just trying to explain demographics.
Yeah, and that's the case for both of us. Well, to me, like, one of the most stark differences between us, you and I as millennials, and say Gen Z, like, I'm gonna use Medicare Fembot as an example of this.
Someone's gonna clip that.
Yeah, well, hopefully it's in context. You and I both grew up with the internet, but we weren't born into the internet age.
Right.
We kind of grew up with it.
In fact, I was an outlier niche nerd that got on the internet before everybody else. And even I am less like born into it than they are. Like, I got online in BBS boards in the early 90s, and it still amazes me how like terminally online a lot of Zoomers are. But it's not surprising considering they've been bombarded with it since birth.
Whereas like I think that Medicare Fembot and Faith Vickers and the Zoomers, like, I remember a world before Facebook and before the social media age of the internet. I don't know. They might, because they're in an S7, but generally, I don't know many Zoomers that don't. I don't know many Zoomers or many, Gen Alpha or whatever your son's generation is.
Yeah, Gen Alpha.
Yeah, they were all born into an era where social media already existed.
Mm-hmm.
And
social media, I think that's the difference, actually.
Yeah.
See, we were born into the internet. They were born into social media. And social media is a completely different animal.
Yeah.
Like, the very notion that you would like name yourself and give out like your location on the internet is like when Facebook and like MySpace and stuff first came out, my generation absolutely all used aliases, because it was like ingrained in us that you don't, you say ASL, right? But like location, it's like your age. ASL, we have to explain in case the Zoomer's watching. ASL is age, sex, location. We used to shorthand that to people because we were all anonymous, right? We were just screen names on the internet. And location generally meant like the Northeast or the Southwest, or even maybe your state.
Yeah.
But no more than that ever. And many times people would lie about their location for the same reasons. So we were raised into like a non-culture, even before it like had a term like that. Like, we all preferred, to be screen names because that's how it was. And we were told that if we weren't, it was a bad thing. It was scary.
Yeah. yeah, so social media for me for a long time wasn't me going on Facebook. It was going on comic book web forums, like actual web
Right.
forums, which I
You would
know.
go on a forum for a specific topic. There'd be off topic like boards there, maybe.
Yeah,
You could talk about a couple other things, but the primary reason that you go there was to talk to other people that shared an interest. And it could be anything from, like you said, comic books to coding to fucking jerking off, right? Like there's a forum for everything somewhere, I'm sure, and people talking
yeah,
about it. And that's how the internet and everybody was just a screen name, and that's how the internet basically used to be. Then came like the GeoCities era where everybody had their own web page that was like tacky and full of like my favorite band and all this shit, which led to MySpace, where they made like a dedicated page in a kind of connected network. And that was, people want to say Facebook, people want to say Twitter, but like MySpace really changed everything, because that's the template still to this day, where you have the interconnected network of pages where people can cross communicate with each other
yeah.
instead of on a specific topic, just life in general.
Yeah, I mean, and I think the other thing too is, I mean, along with social media, the smartphone,
Right. Accelerated it, because now instead of having to set up a computer and sit down and learn operating system that you might not know, a lot of people even in my generation really never touched computers, so they didn't get, like the millennial generation, I would say probably at least a third of them didn't get online until smartphones, like at all.
right? Yeah, that's even a lot of my friends still, like they weren't really online until they had a smartphone. So
Yeah. And
I
and even then, a lot of them will still keep it minimalist, where they'll have a Twitter, or a Facebook, but they're not posting a lot. And it's because their family bullies, yeah, you gotta get on, because all the old people are on Facebook, right? So your family members are like, you gotta get on Facebook and share pictures of the kid. I have an excuse
yeah,
now. I
yeah.
got banned.
I amazingly I haven't gotten banned from Facebook, but that's because I never go on there. So at
I
least
really
not.
didn't post a lot. I was at Straight Pride Boston, and that was apparently a fucking nuclear offense.
I I used to post on Facebook like back when I was in high school a lot, but like that was also, back when I was a stupid teenager. And when I was in high school, like there was a whole thing of like relationship statuses were like a whole thing, and it was pretty fucking, I mean, it's
I am
still.
I am thankful that I have been in a committed long-term relationship so long as to never have to really think about statuses as a thing.
Yeah.
Except that because Facebook nuked me from orbit, deleted every picture of me and every tag of me, they also changed my wife's status to single.
Oh shit.
That they unpersoned me from my own marriage. Facebook was really mad. And that's why I don't use their platform,
Wow. Yeah,
Yeah.
well, this whole thing of like of people like you need to date more, Sam, and they may be right, but their solution is just get on Tinder. Fuck no, I'm not doing. I refuse to get on Tinder. I refuse to get on TikTok.
Now,
That
you'll have to
that
forgive me, but on this one, I have to rely on what young guys tell me about that. But as I understand it, Tinder's a waste of time for men anyway, because
yeah, it is.
women, they like to like swipe, and they like to get messages back to make them feel good. But and you'll hear this from like the MGTOWs and the incel types that, oh well, they're the 80% of them are hooking up with like the top 10% of guys. There's truth to that, But the vast majority of women on Tinder, and there are studies to back this up too, but I mostly get it from like anecdotes from what young guys talk about. They're not responding back, and they're blocking most of them, and they're just really looking for like validation, like I'm hot because all these guys liked my picture, right? But so am I saying that online dating is out of the question? No, I actually know people that have gotten married and are quite happy that way. Just the TikTok, I'm sorry, Tinder. People seem to put a lot of stock in it, and whether people say it's a hookup app, just a casual sex, or a dating app to like meet people, either way, it does seem to not be the ideal or very efficient at it.
No, well, plus they have a horrible interface, which from a nerd perspective also,
I wouldn't
irritates.
know. I know that there's the like swipe left and right gimmick, and like that's actually really smart, right? It throws back to like, remember hotornot.com?
Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah.
It's hot or not for a generation that claims that hot or not is bad somehow, and it's
Right.
like,
It's hot or not, and sometimes people get laid.
yeah,
They reinvented the wheel, but no, it does seem like it's tough out there for a young guy, but I am quite glad to not have to navigate it. But I will say this: it wasn't easy when I was that age either. When I was
no.
a young single guy.
And that's the thing, is it never is for any generation.
If any young guys having trouble with women are fucking watching this, and I hope not. I think our audience are a bunch of alpha chads, but just talk to girls. Just say hi. Start there.
Yeah,
Just trust me on that. When you see a girl at the cashier, just hey, how you doing? Nice day, right?
yeah.
Simple. Keep it simple. That'll build your confidence. It'll go a long way. Just trust me.
Yeah, I mean, small talk, it's worked for me. So, also pro tip too: do not spurg out about politics as an opening line. I bring that up specifically because, listen, I did that when I was a teenager. It didn't.
I saw you from across the room, and I wanted you to be my tradcath wife. Yeah. You gotta have a little fucking tact. You gotta. Girls like a guy who's funny. Girls like a guy who's fun, and girls like a guy who's nice.
Yeah, girls like all that. But let me tell you, girls are not interested in. Well, most girls, I should say, are not interested, at least not on the first date, of, well, which libertarian economic, philosophy do you?
Girls, there's a pro tip. Girls aren't interested in politics, and if they are, it's a red flag. And that means that even if she's even if she's of your political stripe, that's still a red flag, because girls naturally aren't political. They have to be brought into it, and it's a sign that maybe there might be more going on there, and it's something you should be concerned about, because women in general end up falling very close in the political spectrum to their husbands or their significant other.
Yeah, I can tell you from experience, going to a few, young Republican conventions. Yeah, that is definitely true.
And the more extreme her politics are, the bigger the red flag.
Well, yeah, and that's pretty much, like, not to get too off topic, but there's a reason why the hot and crazy ratio
we've already gotten. We were supposed to be talking about Trump getting arrested. We've been off topic.
What else there is there really to say about Trump getting? I mean, they're really.
I think we already nailed it. I think we're now waiting to see if it's real. I think the important thing was to lead with that it's an anonymous source, and the charge is something stemming from an incident that had already been settled, and an indictment is not a conviction. But Other than that, what else can we say? Well, actually, I got one. I think that there is a faction within the Democrats, and it's probably the people doing this, that want Trump to win the whole election, actually. Do you want to hear why?
Yeah.
Have I got your attention?
Yeah, well, you've got my attention, and you've got hopefully you've got the audience's attention.
I hope so. Well, it's because Joe Biden refuses to not run, and they're willing to cost the election to him because they know this will martyr Trump, essentially. Right? In a metaphorical sense. They're treating him like a martyr, right? And they know that that's going to garner support for him. And they know that at that point, he's probably going to win a general election. If they don't know this, then they're stupid. But I think there's a faction of them, at least, that know this. And that faction comes from the far left, because Joe Biden isn't extreme enough for them anyway. He's refusing to step down, essentially. And they figure if they can crash Joe Biden from not being reelected and he loses the rematch to Trump, they can make the case that it was caused by his liberal policies, and how they could fix that is with more socialistic ones. And so they're going to try and reform and take over the party.
That actually makes a lot of sense.
I'm pretty sure that it's true. I've seen talkings of them that suggest this to be the case. I can't say who's a part of this faction or if any of them have the power to do so, but it does seem like the charges are stemming from that kind of mentality rather than we're going to stop him. That the irony is they might want to stop Joe Biden because the chaos that would cause may allow them to take control. Also factor in mind, and this kind of harkens right back to what we were talking about, 2024 will be the first election where the boomers are not the majority voting demographic. The millennials are. That changes things because boomers have been a reliable demographic. Now they're still there, there's just less of them than had been previously and more millennials voting than had been previously. That's the difference. 2028 comes along, that divide's even bigger. 2032, boomers are a smaller demographic at that point than all the other major generations, because even at that point, Gen Alpha will be of voting age. So the decline of the boomers' power is coming because Father Time comes for us all, but it's going to make the ability for like the far left, again, like I said, that motivated by that kind of Gen X Zoomer radicalism, right, can then make the case, look, we let the neolibs have Biden. We didn't even want him, but we let them have him to take down Trump. And look what happened. The second time, he refused to step aside. And what happened? Orange Man beat him. And now we got a fascist in office. So we need to reform this Democrat Party. And we need to get rid of those neolibs. We need to get Bill Maher out of here.
Well, and again, that's why I'm saying
he's a racist anyway.
Well, and that's why I'm saying it doesn't matter if Trump actually gets like arrested. What the Dems want, right. they want that mug. They want the mugshot of Trump.
I don't even like they do. You're not wrong, but I don't even think the arrest matters or an indictment at this point. All they needed to do was the rumor itself. That's why I hark on that it's a fucking anonymous source.
Yeah.
Because an anonymous source in the last few years, if you've been paying attention, sometimes means bullshit.
Oh yeah.
Just flat out bullshit. And that's not just a recent thing. Can I give the biggest spoiler in like American politics history?
Please do.
Deep Throat wasn't a real person. Deep Throat was Woodward and Bernstein. They made it up themselves to get a fucking warrant, to get fucking investigations going. Anonymous sources are cover for bullshit. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry to go off on that one, but it matters a lot that the most influential and important anonymous source in American legal history was a figment of the writer's imagination in order to con the public into getting an investigation going, which was essentially a witch hunt against Richard Nixon.
Thank you. I actually held that opinion for years. Well, I held the opinion that Richard Nixon did nothing wrong.
Opening trade with China, but that's the only one that I would
Well,
point to.
yeah, that,
but who could have
who
could have predicted it?
Okay, that, but like in regards to I'm sorry, I should have specified. When it comes to Watergate, Nixon did nothing.
Right.
Nothing wrong.
And like, for a lot of people don't know the history. Of course, G. Gordon Liddy famously took the fall for it, and under oath and in Congress admitted that it was his plan, his idea. I don't know why that kind of gets forgotten. They purposely didn't tell him. They didn't tell Richard Nixon what they were doing because they were concerned it might be illegal, so they didn't want to implicate him in it. So they, rogue government agents went off the reservation. Where have we heard that before? It seems a pretty common refrain these days.
Yeah, well, I mean, rogue government agents, that's like every Hollywood movie ever.
Yeah, well, that's like every mass shooter. Oh, sorry. Oh, too far. Sorry.
We're canceled off. Oh shit, we're canceled off YouTube for sure now. Oh wait, we already were.
Yeah.
Speaking of YouTube, see how I segued there?
That was perfect.
So apparently, Max, you yourself have a nice little show on the internet called Cringing Over Coffee. But as you explained to me, you're backing up things because YouTube's new CEO, and this is why I said a few weeks ago, like, when it comes to YouTube booting me off the platform, I'm not really worried about it because I feel like it was going to happen anyway, especially with this new policy coming around and this new guy, which is basically, as I understand it, you can now be banned for basically criticizing other creators.
Yeah,
on the platform.
So they're taking a page out of the Twitch book, which is to specifically ban what they call creator on creator harassment. Now, the terms, you can go read the terms of service on this yourself. The change is now in effect. But basically, this means, for example, I'm going to use the most famous one. Of course, we sometimes laugh at the second most famous one, but we're going to talk about Chris Chan. You can't criticize Chris Chan on YouTube anymore for anything because he has a YouTube. So that's creator on creator harassment. So if you show videos of him doing stupid shit, you could potentially have your channel banned, and it will be fully like legitimate as far as YouTube is concerned. I know a lot of times people argue about this, but like, you have to remember, I know nobody likes hearing it because it's what people say, but it is a private company and they can do that. And that's why we live in such a great age where we can be over here on Odyssey or over here on Rumble or over here you're on Spotify. So you're bigger than me, but iTunes, whatever, right? There's other places for you to go and share your content without having to worry about that. Because look, as a guy that does lol-cal content on Cringing Over Coffee, that's basically what I do. I don't cover the big ones like Chris Chan or Ethan Ralph. I have my own little stable of weirdos that are very funny. And, some of them don't hate me. Some of them don't consider it harassment because they have a sense of humor. Big shout out to Dice Golden specifically, who's taken a lot of my criticisms and used them to change his content for the better. So, no, what I think I do is a service. I believe in bullying. So I don't believe it's harassment, but I do think it's bullying. And I think that bullying is a positive force in society.
You know, I actually believe the same thing.
They can go over the line,
Oh yeah.
obviously. You know, before anybody, oh, Max thinks, you know, this instance of bullying where they killed a kid is bad. No, like a perfect example, the jocks at the school in Columbine who raped Eric Harris in the shower. Like that, bullying a bit too fucking far. And it's, look, I'm not saying he was justified in what he did. He certainly was not. But it makes it a lot more understandable.
Yeah.
You know, any man who, you know, could picture getting gang raped in a shower at 16 years old can maybe understand the fucking anger behind it, if not the actual actions.
Yeah, but then there's the flip side, which again goes to Gen Z and their social media, which is
No bullying at all.
He posted a mean meme of me on Facebook. I'm gonna commit suicide now because of.
Well, it's more than that, right? It's
and not to say
your
that
opinion is bad. Oh, this is harassment and bullying.
Which, you know, look, I've said this before. We're living in a time where the two opposite extremes get magnified because it's the internet, and you know, that's just the way things.
To paraphrase a clean version of Tyler the Creator, how is cyberbullying real? Just get off the computer.
Yeah.
Just walk away. And that's still true. And this is I think a thing that people forget. And, you know, I was out, like I told you, I was like, oh yeah, Sam, I gotta do my run, and then we'll catch up and do the show. You know, and I'm out on my run. My God, it's a beautiful day. I even was laughing during your intro because it's from sunny South Florida. And I'm like, yeah, today I'm from sunny Massachusetts where it's a whopping 50. And that to me is a fucking heat wave. Beautiful day. I'm out there walking, saying hi to little old ladies and just being just out in the world. I had my phone on because I listen to music, but I keep it in my pocket. You know, I'm detached. I'm out there enjoying myself. Or sometimes, you know, take my kid to the park. All I'm saying is we spend way too much time worrying about shit in the little idiot box in front of us. And it actually has less of an impact on your day-to-day life than you might think. And if you just kind of turn the idiot box off sometimes, you might find yourself with a little less stress.
Yeah. No, and that kind of goes back to my point of that is why, and I love, folks, for those of you who listen, I love you, but I'm not going to name anyone specific.
Well, you can turn off the idiot box right after the Whitfield report.
Well, yeah.
Then turn it back on next week.
I love the folks that listen to this but this is exactly why a few of the people who were like tweeting at me and DMing me all panicked. Oh my God, Sam, Trump is getting arrested. You need to go on stream and talk about this right now. And it was like Saturday morning. I was like, calm down. You know, there's nothing to talk about. It's a Saturday morning. I'm going to enjoy my weekend. You go enjoy yours.
It was a Saturday morning after St. Patty's Day. Aren't you supposed to be like not you in particular, but just generally, aren't you supposed to be like hungover or something?
I will proudly say that, like, I had 3 Guinnesses. I was hungover, but like I went and got like in fact, I never get up at like 7 a.m. on a Saturday that day. The reason why I did was because I went out to get a breakfast sandwich, and that's when I, you know, saw the news. And it wasn't like one of those things like, oh my God, I need to talk about this, you know, immediately. It was one of those things like, well, this should be interesting to see how it goes. So, you know, if this was something like if another 9/11 had happened, then yeah, maybe that would be a bit more dire. But, you know, like, this whole Trump thing might not even, you know, come to fruition. We just don't know yet.
Yeah, that's why I was really conservative about talking about the topic to start with, because it could literally just be that they spread this rumor and it's not they don't necessarily think they have something to get the indictment, because you got to remember it hasn't gone to the grand jury, at least not the last I checked. It certainly didn't go to them on the weekend, right?
Right.
So we didn't really have anything to go off of. So maybe they just put this out to get this like narrative going. We don't really know anything except it was an anonymous source. And again, I urge everybody listening to take any anonymous source ever for anything with a grain of salt.
Yep.
As much as I like being anonymous, the problem is it's really hard to verify an anonymous source. You independently, right? So the journalist who puts out the scoop, they talked to the source and they know that this is the thing that's going on, right? But like for you or me, well, we can't go talk to them because they're anonymous, so we can't really verify it.
Yeah. Well, and so getting back to this whole YouTube thing though,
Right.
because this does all kind of tie in. What do you think about the new CEO and that's like taking over for Susan?
In terms of like, people have said he's an NFT guy. I don't really know much about him. But what I can say is the first interaction I, as like a creator, have had with him is him banning a bunch of my friends and striking their videos all immediately under the guise of a new quote unquote harassment policy, which doesn't meet the definition of any other form of harassment, by the way. Certainly not legal harassment. And so again, I stand by the fact that what I do on Cringing Over Coffee is not harassment. I've never encouraged anybody to harass anybody. And it's all in good fun. And I actually encourage my guys to make their lives better. They just don't listen, which is kind of what makes it funny, right? I'm kind of a baby. That's what they don't get. I'm the baby face to the audience who understands what's going on. And they come off as a heel because they're like, don't take obviously good advice and think that I'm out to like ruin their life because I laughed at the thing they said. That's not
Right.
harassment. Again, it is bullying. Bullying, this is my like catchphrase on the issue. Bullying is society's immuno-response to aberrant behavior.
Yeah, so you come from the Jim Medicare school of on that then too, I guess. So.
I would say I agree with Mr. Medicare on quite a few things regarding that, as well as that the best thing to do to the elites is laugh at them. He's very spot on that one. But the idea being is that society itself, this happens. Like, kids pick on other kids naturally because the other kid is different than them. And it's not for the bad. And yes, sometimes, yeah, like a guy like you could, there's nothing you can do about your lot in life, right? It's not that you didn't choose it. It's not something you can change. But unfortunately, in cases like that, the tendency to want to like bully so that you can get the aberrant behavior change also rubs off on people like you, right? So it is a more complex issue than that. But at the end of the day, I think the majority of the time, if somebody is engaged in degenerate or aberrant behavior, bullying them, or immoral behavior, bullying them is moral, actually.
Yeah, well, I mean,
you can do it in an immoral way.
Sure.
But it's moral in the sense of like, I see it in the sense of being my brother's keeper, personally.
Yeah. Well, and then, like, I'm not gonna lie, there are times growing up where I was bullied. I wasn't bullied all the time.
Right.
But
no one ever is. The people that say they were usually full of shit.
Yeah, well, there are people who make it seem like they were bullied all the time, and that's
what happens in those cases is the few times they get bullied really has such an impact on them that it feels like it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so this is what one thing where like I got bullied a lot. Well, not a lot, but the one of the things I got bullied on wasn't because I was like a handicap at all. It was because I was a political nerd. and
Sure.
people thought that was weird,
Yeah.
right? But instead of getting ass hurt about it, it motivated me to to do better, to
Well, you could
work
still
on.
be political and not be like a fucking spurg about it, right? And that's the key.
Right. Yeah.
You were just now giving advice to other people on how to do that. So clearly, that's a case of bullying creating a positive outcome.
Right. It encouraged me to, improve myself and to be better. Yeah, maybe I was spurging out a little, too hard in some cases. It wasn't necessarily a negative thing. I could have broken down about it, but I didn't. And I do think that that's where like a lot of people do kind of get a little, miffed with the Zoomers, is because everything seems to come down to the fifis with them.
Yeah, but they also they do the most toxic forms of bullying to each other as well. It's both. Like on the one hand, they have this like complete aversion to the concept of bullying as a generation, and then on the other hand, there's some of the most nasty, sadistic, kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Passive aggressive bullies that have ever done the fucking job of bullying, right? They will swat each other as a bullying thing.
Yeah, well, and see, that's the whole thing too, is like that, like as a concept, like that wouldn't even enter my mind to do that. Like like
Yeah,
my
I've
like
never seen an instance of, because there's lots of videos of people getting swatted, right? I've never seen an instance of somebody getting swatted that I actually thought was funny, right? Like ignoring the morality of the situation. I've just never seen one that I thought was funny. It's always very harrowing.
No, the one video I've seen, and I don't think it's even of the swatting per se, but the one video I have seen that is kind of funny is the meme of the SWAT guys like breaking through the windows, and the one guy like comes through the roof. I think it's like a meme of some kind, like the ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
To be fair, it's funny because it's so over the top, right? It's funny because
Yeah.
it's funny because it is harrowing, like I said. And that's what I'm saying is like you see like the streamers getting swatted, and it's not funny, right? At least not to me. It's whether I like them or dislike them, like even Ralph getting the called by the Mexican authorities. It was like, oh God, I hope they don't like shoot him.
Yeah.
It's yeah, I like, just from a comedy point, I don't understand why they think it's funny, but then from like obviously a moral standpoint, like that's attempted murder.
Yeah, and again, well, and then one thing that we talked about off air is how, that is one thing that the police need to reform,
Yeah. Yeah,
among
well, no,
other
the cop
things.
that's the thing. Cops have to stop this. You're never gonna get these weird antisocial internet people to stop doing it, especially when they suffer no consequences. But if you can't catch them, there is behaviors among police that could be amended and reformed to prevent this problem from happening. Where, because look, there was a man killed by a swatting not that long ago, and somebody sentenced to life in prison over it. So it does get to that level. They have killed dogs. They've flashbanged babies. Like, look, cops can way go over the line sometimes, and especially when they think there's a bad guy in there and he's about to hurt good people, they tend to be on edge, gung-ho, ready to go. Of course, they train for this, especially SWAT teams. They train for this kind of thing, so the adrenaline's flowing. They're ready to kick that door in and let it loose, man. And that's a very unsafe environment. And I do think that the police and how dispatch relays information and how they do wellness checks and all of this stuff really should be looked at. Otherwise, I don't think we're ever going to solve the problem. But we're especially not going to solve the problem if you're not arresting these people. Like, how many people in that Ethan Ralph sector get swatted all the time, and nobody's getting arrested for it? Nobody's seeing any charges whatsoever. That's extremely concerning in a much wider context to me.
Yeah, it really is. I mean,
that's not me calling for them just to metaphorically lynch the first guy they suspect either. I want the people responsible caught, right?
Right.
But the thing is it seems like that isn't happening. So what other alternative than police amending their behavior do we have? We can just let this continue. We can catch the people doing it and show there are consequences, or police can stop fucking doing it. Those are the only three options.
Well, they need to amend their procedures for sure.
Yeah. And I don't necessarily know how. I'm not suggesting a specific policy course. It's just that, look, if cops are willing to just kick the door in and shoot people over a text-to-speech message, which is literally what's happening in some cases, this is a problem, right? You're going to trust. I understand that, like, there's people who are deaf, disabled, whatever. They use text-to-speech for legitimate purposes, but it also clearly provides the anonymity and cover for these people to engage in that. And this is the thing. This is why it all ties back. This is allowed to go on just fine, and YouTube wants to say me making a video about Johnny Fox's harassment. It's mind-blowing. Like, you mentioned Mr. Medicare earlier. Like, he's a cancer patient being swatted. Why is that not a big deal? Or the Vickers family, as I understand it, Mr. Vickers and his wife weren't even home the first time they got swatted. The first time, I have to fucking specify the first time, because this happens all the fucking time. But and I get angry because I was gonna say the first time it happened, they were out on a vacation, and the kids were home with their adult daughter, Faith. So it was a house full of fucking children. So you swatted a house full of fucking children.
Right.
And nobody's gone to jail for this. Nobody's been arrested for this. So, okay, like, and as I understand it, they did, like, walk the kids out at gunpoint. They actually, at least the first time, now they know better. Now they give them a call. Now they let them know, hey, this has been said. Did you kill anybody? He says no, and then it's fine. I get that. But that first time shouldn't have happened. There is no excuse for it. It was a text-to-speech call making absurd claims that could have been easily disproven by knocking on the fucking door.
Yeah. That's what needs, like, and that is the one thing that, like, confuses me. Like, what is so hard at, like, to me, that's what a wellness check should be. Like, knocking on the door, like, like making a phone call to, like, I mean, I know people don't have house phones anymore.
No, I can understand that they are, like, I can understand being required to see to it in person because there is potentially a person in danger on the premises. I get that, right? But you could still just knock on the door. We don't need the SWAT team with the fucking battering ram, okay? We don't need it for every fucking thing, especially if it's text to speech. And did they do a back trace on it to find out if the location matched the place? Probably not. They probably got what I imagine is, as I understand it, both Jim and the Vickers are in kind of small towns, and it's probably the most exciting call that they've gotten in fucking years. And so they shine up their fucking boots and they get up, and it's like the beginning of the fucking old Ghostbusters cartoon where they're all getting, or Batman suiting up or something, right? And they're all fucking hyping themselves up. They're probably listening to some fucking boomer rock, like we will rock you. They're ready to go. And they fucking kick a door in, and it's a house full of fucking children. What happens if Mr. hyped himself up, militarized police with his fucking automatic fucking weapon, kicks that fucking door in, gets scared by a fucking little kid and shoots him in the head?
Oh,
Not only is it not
yeah.
impossible, but it fucking happens all the time. Maybe not off of swatting, but we see police shooting in the line of duty, not when they not necessarily should all the time. It's no surprise that if you make this happen, it's a much more dangerous environment. This particular topic gets me a little upset. Sorry, audience.
No,
Apologize.
I'm laughing not because of the, not because of the topic necessarily, but because you are so animated about it. This also speaks to my libertarian thing of, I don't agree with defunding the police, but certainly demilitarize the police to a certain extent.
I prefer the term reform. I believe that we should reform police practice. That's the way I would say it. It's not as good of a slogan, but it's much more accurate.
Yeah.
Because I don't think, like, there are even some of the famous BLM cases. Eric Garner is one of them. What happened to Eric Garner never should have happened. The police were totally in the wrong there. He was selling loose cigarettes. Doesn't require a chokehold. Sorry. Of course, the instant people, why the BLM doesn't really talk about it as much anymore is because the officer in question was a black woman sergeant that actually applied the fatal stranglehold.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are cases like that. There are cases that look, Black Lives Matter isn't necessarily wrong about police brutality. Just because they've acted inappropriately. I think that most of the young, black people that were out there marching, in their head, what they were marching for is, police, please stop beating my ass and my friends' asses for no reason.
Well,
and if you can't open your heart up to that plight, then I don't know, like, you're probably not a nice person.
Well, this is another thing that I would actually love to have a guest on about, because I've heard black people say that that Black Lives Matter started out as a good organization, but then got co-opted by I'm not going to say
I think in terms of organization, I've always found it very distasteful, but the message and the very notion of it, look, I've experienced police brutality. So in my mind, I don't particularly think it's a universally just racial based issue.
Right.
But I do think that more black people live in poverty, and more black people live together in poverty in major cities, and so are more subject to bigger police forces with more moving parts and more guys. And they're, probably more likely to be on the receiving end of abuse. I don't see why they wouldn't be. And that doesn't necessarily mean, the other thing is, look, and FBI crime statistics bear this out, they also commit more crime, violent crime. And the tragic part of that is against their own community.
Yeah.
So not only do they commit the most crime of any demographic, violent crime, but it's being perpetrated on black people. By black people. And so police are in those neighborhoods because there's violent crime, and they interact with people, and they get jaded, I think, in a lot of cases. And they look, cops, again, a cop as a profession is so high stress. They have one of the highest divorce rates. They have one of the highest rates of mental illness. They have one of the highest rates of drug abuse and abusing their spouse, actually one of the highest rates of that as well. So it's just a powder keg. This is something that we should address. I think Republicans do themselves a disservice by just saying back the blue. There's more to it than that. Now, there's plenty of cops out there that act in good faith and are good people and uphold the law and are shining beacons in their community. And I would never say differently, but there are plenty that are bad. And closing our eyes about it because it's politically inconvenient is stupid. And one of the things I particularly liked about Trump during his administration was just that he tried to address that issue. You could argue about the crime, the reform bills, the criminal justice reform bill. You could say it wasn't as effective, or you could say, it didn't do much. There's different arguments you can make about it, but at least the guy was open to, like, let's talk about this. Biden hasn't done anything even close to that, and he's supposed to be on that side of things.
Yeah, that's the ironic thing is the party that always talks about like reforming the police never do.
Right. Well, and let's not forget the Biden crime bill is part of why we're at this stage anyway. He passed the crime bill in the 90s that enforced 3 strikes and you're out policies, the severe crackdowns on crack cocaine in particular, which 100% was targeted at the Black community, because who the fuck else at the time was smoking crack? It wasn't in the suburbs, okay? It was targeted. It was very targeted. And look at the effects of it. Look, the ravages of crack on the Black community is fucking horrific. And then the ravages of the drug war to combat crack, I would argue, is probably worse. Either way, it's left probably 2 generations completely dependent on the welfare system and without fathers in the home. And with no role models other than either criminals, athletes, or rappers.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder if it's all by design too.
Certainly there's an element of it, but I think it's just it's the natural outcome of the welfare state, because the disparity that we're seeing in that all of those categories I've mentioned, single motherhood, drug abuse, mental illness, on and on and on, criminality, victim of being a violent crime, on and on and on. The gap, particularly divorce and single motherhood, by the way, is the number one cause of number one suspect on this list. It's the gap in the Black community versus the white community on all of those topics is being bridged super quickly. It's the welfare state took a little longer to take effect in the poor white community, but when it did, it had the exact same effect.
Oh yeah, no, Dave Chappelle has talked about that in his specials too. So
it's because of the culture of Black America, it was maybe easier for that effect to happen very quickly, but it's always going to be the effect of rampant welfarism.
Indeed. Alrighty, well,
how we fix it, I mean, that's a debate you could have for the next 1,000 years.
Yeah, well, that's a debate we've been having for several,
about 1,000 years. No, 2,000. Yeah.
So, yeah, and I mean, wokeness. I mean, here's the thing: the term the term being woke to like racial injustice isn't necessarily a bad idea in and of itself, that premise, but the way that it's been kind of I guess, I don't know, transformed, maligned, whatever you want to call it, to just be like outrage culture, that's where a lot of people have problems with it. So
right, and it's the distinction between equality and equity, right? That's and it's really slick that they do it that way, where they've slowly replaced equality with equity, because most people don't understand the difference, because it's kind of nuanced. Where just if I'm sorry, audience, if I explain things that you understand, but when I introduce a term, I like to explain myself.
I'm the same way.
So equality, obviously, we all know, is like expected. Everybody has the same starting point, right? Everybody has access to the same level of opportunity as equality. Whereas equity is everybody has the same outcome, which is completely different. And so in order to achieve equity, the tall man's legs must, like my legs got to get chopped off because Sam's in a wheelchair, right? So I got to be in a wheelchair. That's
Yeah.
equity.
Well,
It's not right, and it doesn't fix Sam's problem, right? And it just creates a problem for me, but the outcome is then the same.
Well, and based on my educational background in technical writing and whatnot, the other thing about equity and equality is visually, if you see them printed on a page, equity and equality, if you're just like scanning a page but not really reading it, they look very similar.
Yeah, there's that.
They can almost be confused, but your brain can misread the
Well, and because they're so similar, people assume that they're synonyms, which is not the case.
Right, exactly. But that that's a fairly common mistake to to make. So
And that's why they use that word specifically too. It's part of the
exactly
thing. A lot of the left stuff is little mental tricks like that.
Yeah, I would say like 95% of it is psychological.
Mm-hmm.
So
yep. So in conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, on the YouTube issue, because we keep fucking going in circles on other things, we find interesting stuff to talk about. If you do any type of lolcow content, back your shit up right now, because it's not going to be a great time for us in the future on YouTube. But that's okay, because these other platforms are growing to a point where they're kind of sustainable.
Yeah, and that is one thing to kind of wrap up the show here. I do want to kind of point out. I know that Max brought up the Curt Doolittle thing, but I do kind of want to address that real quick. I really appreciate everyone who has tuned in to watch the episode, especially since we pre-recorded it and did it beforehand. A lot of people asked why we did that, and that was because Curt does not do live interviews. He prefers to do pre-recorded podcasts, and I don't know why that is, but I don't it's just his preference. So we go with what the guest wants.
He doesn't talk to a lot of people like at all. He did kind of make an exception for us, and we're like eternally grateful to him and Propertarian Institute and all that for helping us out.
And like I've gotten DMs from people saying that was like a really inspiring interview, and now they want to think at like getting into artificial intelligence. And I'm amazed that like a lot of people were touched by that podcast. So I really appreciate it. Also, I mean, I know that people would prefer. Here's the other thing I will say about YouTube, kind of relating to this whole thing, is I know that because YouTube is the biggest, right? We all tend to go there just by default. But I think like I've been trying to watch more content on Rumble and Odyssey, just breaking that habit. And so I think the more content appears on these alternative platforms, I mean, heck, even Spotify does video podcasts now. I think the more people get onto alternative platforms, I think it and actually give YouTube competition, I think the better it will be for all of us. So in the long run,
I was unaware that they had video on Spotify now. That's actually pretty cool. That's probably where I'll watch your show from now on then.
Yeah, that's where I've been. Well, they don't do live streaming yet, but yeah, I mean that was one of the cool things about Joe Rogan going over to Spotify was he was kind of talking about behind the scenes of that deal one day, and one thing he said when he was going over to Spotify was he was like, we have to have video because that's a big part of our show. And if we're not doing both video and audio, then, I'm not doing the deal. So they basically created the video audio multi-stream API for Rogan specifically, and we're like, well, why don't we just open that up to creators? So they did, and now like a lot of like other shows are doing. I think Joey Diaz is doing that show. I know Lex Friedman, like a lot of people who can do like sports shows are now doing that. So that's cool. Also, Rumble on their app allows background play, which is nice. So
which YouTube tries to charge you money for.
yes, and sadly, I'm one of the ones that has been paying for that. But I think.
Well, the funny thing about that is the effect that had with me is just drove me to when I'm out or when I'm in a situation where I would turn off the screen to listen to something, I'm just going to do it on Spotify.
Yeah, there you go. And that's partially why our Spotify numbers. I mean, even before we got kicked off YouTube, that's a lot of people would go to Spotify for that reason. So, but anyway, I wanted to thank you all for tuning into the podcast that we did with Curt. That was really a great experience, and I'm glad everyone enjoyed it. Not sure who we're going to have on on Wednesday, but the other thing is on Friday we will be celebrating my 15-year anniversary of me podcasting. So ought to be fun.
Big milestone.
Big milestone. I sent Max some of my old shit from Blog Tech Radio, some of which is cringe, and I'm sure that he and Shmuley.
I've been poring over some of the content to try and find some clips that might make you laugh. So we'll maybe do that on the Friday show. See if I could get you laughing at your old shit, because some of it has made me laugh, and not at you, but with you.
Right.
Well, there's some great content, actually. I was surprised how much better. I thought young Sam, I was thinking probably was a little less confident, which is true, and maybe didn't know what he was doing. But no, you had a knack.
I did. Well, and see, I know I had a knack, but I also, a lot of the content I haven't heard since I recorded some of that. So like a lot of this stuff is like I don't remember doing, and that's the other thing is when you do X amount of podcasts, you don't always remember what show. Yeah, you don't remember specific details of like a show unless it's like fairly recent. So,
or like a big one, like one that was like really relevant. Like I have some of those with I did so many episodes of my show about Dave Grady, friend of the Cringe Coffee House, long time, and some of those episodes I've completely forgotten, but I'll never forget when he got into a war of words with a guy that feeds cats, right? So, or the time he yelled racial slurs at his neighbor through a megaphone. That was also like I remember that show.
Yeah. Well, and then I'm also trying to find I'm actually trying to find the video of the interview I did with Mr. Mike Shealy. I was nice to you.
I was nice to you. Well, really, Sammy?
Which I can't believe that little old me created a whole, like, that's one of the popular merch memes out there now. And I was partially responsible for that. So,
Look, Doolittle was responsible for a large chunk of the new viewership, but Mersh was responsible for some of it too. Because certainly I was absolutely humbled to notice that like my episode with you last week was significantly higher than all the previous things for about a year. So clearly Mersh, thank you.
Yeah,
you really helped us out. Shout out to Mersh.
May you live 1,000 years.
Yeah, may you
So,
live 1,000 years and be happy for none of them.
yeah.
Not
Well,
It's not like you have to tell him to be unhappy. He will
well,
do it to himself anyway.
yeah. Well, I mean, there's always listen. There's always, Jesse's feeding him, giving him free food. I don't know, especially in this economy. Like, if I were merch, I would be thrilled, to have a fan like Jesse who.
Imagine getting mad that people send you good takeout food. Because, like, for a while, that's exactly what they were doing. They switched over to coleslaw because he was eating it all. But, yeah, they were sending him, like, McDonald's. Or, like, they were sending him subs and pizzas and everything out. Like, all the shit he liked. Specifically the shit they'd seen him eating before on stream or whatever. And this motherfucker, like, I just, look, they tailor-made. They specifically sent stuff he would like. I'd probably eat it too. That would probably work on me. I can't lie. I've been working hard at trying to lose weight. It's tough when you get close to 40. But if somebody served me up like a buffalo chicken sub at my door, I might fucking eat it.
Yeah. Well, and at the very least, if you're not going to eat it, you could give it to your kid, maybe. I don't know. But
or a neighbor or something. Yeah, like, I don't know. Getting mad about the free food seems a bit ridiculous. Getting mad about getting sent thousands of pounds of concrete is understandable, but still funny. But yeah, we just had to give, look, we have to give 99% of the credit for the increase to Curt, but there's also a Mersh effect going where he fucking said horrific things about you, and shock of shocks, it made him the heel. Wow.
Yeah, and I just laughed about it. I didn't remember saying anything mean, back. I just laughed about it, and he was like, "Oh, you're gonna own it now?"
No,
yeah,
no, you did at the original point in time. I didn't upload the second clip, but you did do a video, and the reason he's still mad about it, let's be honest, is because you logically proved that he is a retard. Because he fell for a fucking obvious prank, and you said it, and from that moment on, he's hated you. Because what other reason? He responded to the meme so quickly. I put it up. I didn't tag him in it or anything. So he's just searching his own name.
Genius Anus did, because he went after.
Fair enough.
He went after Genius Anus for a bit too. But the thing of it is Genius Anus, and it's kind of poetic I'm about to say this, Genius Anus shits on me regularly because he's a literal asshole.
Yeah, I love it that people take a cartoon talking asshole avatar super seriously. I mean, and he says the most absurd fucking shit all over Twitter, and they take it. Like, he says he does this journalism, right? But separate from that, he says shit that's fucking hilarious, and I just don't understand why you take him super serious.
Well, Max, I mean, I don't know if you're aware of this, but like, according to the people I've seen online, you are Genius Anus. I'm not sure if you are aware of that, but
so I've been told that only by one dude, but it happens, because also they were saying Genius Anus is like 5 other people, and that's true, by the way. All of that is true.
We are, at the end of the day, the real Genius Anus was the friends we made along the way. So,
well, the funny part is Twitter actually banned his avatar now of the just like from the cartoon show Assy McGee, and apparently they said it was not appropriate, so he made a new one, and I've just said, well, doesn't that make you punished anus?
the new one looks like The new one looks horrified.
Well, because the new one is the anus man, right? Because that's what certain crazy people call him.
Yeah.
The anus man's out to get him, you know? It's like a fucking, he's like a children's, bedtime story gone horribly wrong. The anus man.
And here I am, like I'm a full grown man, but my sense of humor is so juvenile sometimes. Like that's just funny to me. The anus man, like that's just something like I would have made up in like junior high or something like that. Like it's just juvenile, but it's funny and how absurd it is.
Well, it's just funny people take that shit. Stop taking the internet so seriously. Even the new shit, it's like you should only take it so seriously. Live your life, man. We only get one shot.
Go out there and touch grass. So
find Jesus, touch grass, talk to girls. That's my 3 rules for life, gentlemen.
But anyway, any other topics you want to bring up, or I think we can call this a day, maybe, unless you have anything else.
No, I nothing particularly this week. I do want to say, so I'm looking into, just to give the audience kind of a heads up of where we're at. We're bringing in guests, obviously, each week. We're going to try to do one guest. Looking at a couple people this week. I'm not sure to tell you who it's going to be. I don't know necessarily yet. We have several pretty big guests coming up. And obviously the Doolittle thing has helped out a lot because it's good. If you didn't watch it yet, please do.
Let me tell you how good it is, folks. I don't even watch my own stuff until like 2 weeks later, just because it's just a thing with me. If I watch my own stuff the day after, like it feels like a movie I've seen too recently, right? Like I know all of, like the plot points and it's not interesting to me.
Mm-hmm.
But I was able to actually separate myself like from the host role and listen to the conversation with Curt as like an audience member. And I actually feel like I gained more insight from listening to Curt the second time around. As opposed to, listening to him, because I wasn't playing host. I was actually able to listen to him as like an audience member, if that makes sense. And it was really good.
It's only an hour, and it's so densely packed with information and interesting tidbits. I highly recommend it. I've watched it 3 times now because the first time I just watched it to watch it. Of course, I wasn't a part of the actual interview. I left that to you and Shmuley just because he knew Curt. So in case you missed anything, he would be there to ask questions. And the dynamic between the 3 of you was great. But then I watched it 2 more times because I was pulling clips. So you can find those clips. Sam's retweeted them. And if you like the clip, the whole thing is just full of them. Like I could have made like 20 clips out of it, but I didn't want to overload everybody.
Oh yeah, well, and we'll parse them out over the week probably. So
yeah. So yep, we got interesting people lined up. I will say that we're going to try and get even more interesting people. And our good friend Mersh said we'll never been bigger than him. Well, that's true. You are very fat, but I think we're doing pretty okay.
Well, yeah, we don't bot our viewers either, so that helps. But anyway, regardless, we'll be here for Monday, for Wednesday, I mean, whether or not that's, with a guest or just us, maybe we'll have more news on the Trump thing by then. We'll talk about that. I don't know, but we'll see you for sure on Wednesday and then again on Friday, folks, and should be a good week. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you Wednesday.
God bless America.
Thanks for listening to The Whitfield Report on the NGC Network. Please visit Sam's website at www.thewnf.com thesamwhitfield.com and support Sam on Patreon at patreon.com/Whitfield Report. Until next time, God bless, God save this great nation, and God, freedom, legacy, in that order.